The cage at the market. The sun was hot above the desert market. The smell of sweat, metal, and rotten food filled the air. People moved through the narrow paths, shouting prices and waving goods. Among them, one man walked slowly, eyes calm and quiet. His name was Jalen, a simple human trader. He wasn't rich. He didn't wear fine clothes or shiny boots, but he had sharp eyes and a quiet heart that saw what others ignored. Then he saw it. At the very end of the market, behind a row of broken machines and cages of alien animals, was something strange. A small, rusted cage. Inside it sat a thin, alien girl. She looked no older than 16 in human years. Her body was dirty, wrapped in old cloth. Her skin was pale, her hair long and tangled like black vines. She sat still, her knees pulled to her chest, her face hidden. A sign hung on the cage. Sold as is. 1 credit. People laughed as they passed. Who would want that? One merchant joked. She doesn't even speak, said another. Might be broken. Maybe use her as a cleaner, someone laughed. Or bait. Jalen didn't laugh. He stepped closer, eyes on her. The girl didn't move. But something in the way she stayed still. It wasn't normal. It wasn't calm. It was fear. Deep, heavy fear. Where's the seller? Jalen asked the nearest merchant. An old alien man with 4 arms and cracked goggles looked over. That thing belonged to the science house. They dumped her here, said she's useless now. Can't work, can't speak, might be dangerous. Dangerous? Jalen raised an eyebrow. The merchant shrugged. They did tests on her, or made her for tests, I don't know. You want her? 1 credit, no returns. Jalen said nothing. He looked at the girl again. Her arms were wrapped in scars, deep lines. Some old, some new. She slowly lifted her face. Her eyes met his. Big, silver, hollow, not angry, not wild, just empty. Like someone who had stopped hoping. Jalen reached into his coat and pulled out 1 coin. It was small and old, but still worth something. He didn't ask more questions. I'll take her, he said. The merchant blinked. You serious? Yes. The merchant laughed. Fine. Take the trash. Just don't bring her back. The cage was opened with a squeak. The girl didn't move. Jalen knelt beside her. He didn't touch her. He just said softly, You're free to come, I won't hurt you. She didn't speak, but slowly, carefully, like a scared animal, she crawled out of the cage. She didn't stand. She stayed low, her head down. The market, crowd stared. Some laughed again, others watched in silence. Jalen didn't care. He placed his coat over her shoulders. The girl flinched at first, but didn't push it away. She walked beside him, slow and shaking, as they left the market. Nobody followed. Nobody asked why. They walked in silence, through the heat, past the ships, back to Jalen's small home on the edge of the colony. He opened the door for her. She paused before entering. Inside it was quiet. A clean space, not rich, but warm. A bed, a table, a tiny kitchen, and a safe roof. The girl stepped inside. She looked around. Her hands touched the walls like she didn't believe they were real. Jalen pointed to a chair. You can sit, I'll bring food. She didn't answer. But she sat. He gave her bread, water and soft fruit. She stared at it, then, after a moment, ate. Fast. Like she hadn't eaten in days. When she finished, she looked at him, not with trust, not with fear, just confusion. Why? She asked in a soft, broken voice. Her first word. Jalen sat down across from her. He smiled a little, because no one else did. The broken thing in the corner. That night the house was quiet. The girl had eaten, but she didn't speak again. Not one word. Jalen watched her from a distance. He didn't push. He didn't ask questions. He simply pointed to the clean bed near the window and said, "You can sleep here. It's yours." The girl looked at the bed. Soft, clean, warm. Then she walked past it and sat in the darkest corner of the room, her knees pulled up, arms wrapped around them. Her back pressed tightly against the wall like she was ready to be hit. She didn't look like someone resting. She looked like something broken. Jalen didn't understand, but he didn't force her. He put a warm blanket near her, turned off the lights, and went to his room. Hours passed. In the dark, the girl didn't sleep. She watched every shadow move. Every small creak of the wooden floor made her flinch. At one point, she touched her wrist. The metal collar was gone, but she could still feel it. She remembered the cold walls, the machines, the voices that spoke of her like she was a tool, not a person, just a thing. She looked at the door to Jalen's room. He hadn't locked her in. She could run. But where? Back to the market? Back to the hands that cut her? Back to the voices that called her it? She wrapped the blanket tighter. The warmth made her chest ache. It felt too soft, too kind, too strange. Morning light crept into the house. Jalen woke early. He walked out slowly, not wanting to startle her, but when he looked, she was still in the same corner, eyes open, not moving. He placed a bowl of warm broth on the table and sat nearby. Quiet. Calm. The girl looked at the food. Her stomach growled, but she didn't move toward it. "Do you have a name?" Jalen asked gently. She said nothing. He tried again. "You can make one, if you want. Something that belongs to you." Still silence. Jalen didn't press. He simply placed a spoon beside the bowl and stood. "I'll be outside if you need me." He walked out the door. The girl waited a full minute before crawling to the table. She picked up the spoon and began to eat slowly, watching the door. Later, Jalen returned with a clean shirt, soft pants, and a towel. "I thought maybe you'd like to wash," he said. The girl stared at the clothes like they were made of gold. Her fingers brushed the fabric. She had never owned anything, never been offered anything. She nodded once. Just once. Jalen pointed to the small washroom. "There's warm water. I'll wait out here." She took the clothes in her arms and walked to the room, shutting the door behind her. Jalen sat at the table pretending to read, but his mind kept thinking, who is she? What happened to her? Why would anyone sell her for one credit? The door creaked open again. He looked up and froze. She stood there, hair wet, face clean, skin pale and marked with dozens of scars. Her body was thin, almost too thin, and her arms still shook slightly. But her eyes, they weren't empty anymore. They were watching him, carefully, like someone trying to understand a puzzle. She wore the clean clothes. The pants were a little too big, the shirt hung loose on her small frame, but she held them like they were armor. "Thank you," she said softly. Her second word, Jalen smiled. "You're welcome." She walked past the bed and paused, then slowly, carefully she sat on it, not in the corner, on the bed. She didn't lie down, but she sat. It was a start. That night, Jalen gave her space. He made dinner and left some for her. He didn't ask more questions, didn't demand answers, but something changed. She looked at him, really looked, not with fear, not with confusion, but with a question in her eyes. Can I trust this? Can I trust you? Later, while he washed dishes, she stood near the window and whispered to herself, I don't know who I am. But the words were heard. Jalen dried his hands and replied softly, Then we'll find out together. Scars that shouldn't be days passed. The girl still didn't tell Jalen her name. Maybe she had forgotten it. Maybe it had been stolen, but she had stopped hiding in the corner. She sat at the table now, ate slowly, slept on the bed, woke early, and stayed quiet. Too quiet. Jalen didn't ask much. He gave her space. But every time he looked at her hands, her arms, her neck, he saw more than dirt or bruises. He saw scars, too many, too sharp. One evening, Jalen was fixing a broken screen on the wall. He needed help to hold the wires. Without asking, the girl stood up and helped. Her hands trembled as she held the cable. "Don't worry," he said. "It's not live." She didn't answer. But suddenly her sleeve slid down her arm, and Jalen saw it. A mark. Not a wound. Not natural. It was a number, burned into her skin. 7319. Jalen gently put down his tool. "Did someone do that to you?" She froze. He knelt beside her. Not close, but enough for her to see his eyes. "Can I see your arm?" he asked softly. She didn't speak, but after a moment, she slowly turned her wrist. More marks. Tiny scars like cuts from needles. Thin lines. Strange symbols. A circle around her shoulder joint. Not accidents, not fights, experiments. "Were you part of a lab?" he asked. The girl blinked. Her lip trembled. I don't know. I remember white lights, cold metal, voices that said, 'Keep subject alive.'" Jalen clenched his fists. Not at her, but at the people who had done this. He had heard rumors. Secret science houses that took alien orphans, called them subjects, broke them, changed them, tossed them away when they were done. This girl was one of them. But there was something else. Some scars were healing too fast, too clean, almost unnatural. That night, Jalen couldn't sleep. He stood in the hallway looking at her door. It was slightly open. She had left it like that. Maybe to feel safe. He peeked inside. She was curled on the bed, blanket pulled to her chin, but her back was uncovered and glowing, very faint, like soft lines under her skin. They moved gently like slow lightning under ice. He stepped back in shock. What was that? He didn't wake her, but he made a note to ask her in the morning. Morning came. She was already awake, sitting at the table. Jalen placed a cup of tea in front of her and sat down. "I saw something last night." Her fingers tightened on the cup. He continued, "Your back. It glowed." She said nothing. "Is that part of what they did to you?" he asked. Finally, she nodded. Very slowly. "I think they put something inside me," she whispered. "To test, to control. But it broke. Or I did." Her voice cracked. "I feel it. Moving, sleeping. Sometimes, humming under my skin." Jalen leaned forward. "Does it hurt?" "No," she said. "Not now. But sometimes I dream of machines, needles, commands I couldn't resist, and when I woke up in the cage and I thought I was just trash." Jalen's voice was firm. "You're not trash. You never were." She looked up. For the first time, tears in her eyes. "But I'm not normal," she said. "I'm not safe." Jalen stood and reached for her hand. "You don't have to be normal," he said. "You just have to be free." Suddenly, a sharp beeping rang from outside the house. Jalen turned fast. A small drone was flying by the window, not local, military grade. Watching. The girl jumped from her seat, heart racing. "They found me," she whispered. "They never stop watching." Jalen grabbed a cover and pulled her away from the window. "Get back," he said. He grabbed his old rifle from under the bed, something he hadn't touched in years. But his hands were steady. He looked at her and said, "You're not going back. Not while I'm alive." The night she screamed, the sky was dark. Quiet, no wind, no stars, just heavy black clouds hanging low over the land. Inside the house, the girl slept for the first time without fear. Her arms weren't wrapped around her knees. She wasn't hiding in the corner. She was under the blanket, breathing softly. Jalen sat on the chair near her bed, pretending to read. But he wasn't focused. His eyes kept drifting to her face. There was peace there now, a small peace. Fragile, But deep inside him, something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. 17 a.m. The house shook, not much, just once. A soft vibration like something big had landed nearby. Jalen stood up fast, his book falling to the floor. He grabbed his rifle. Before he could move to the window, she screamed. It wasn't a normal scream. It was high, wild, not human, not alien, something between a voice and a warning. He ran to her room. She was thrashing on the bed, blanket tossed to the floor, her body arched, her eyes open wide and glowing bright silver. "No! Stop! I'm not your toy!" she shouted. Jalen rushed forward but didn't touch her. "Hey, you're safe, you're in my house." She didn't hear. She screamed louder. Suddenly her arms lit up. Not with fire, with lines of glowing blue and red, veins under the skin, moving fast like electricity. Her body rose an inch from the bed, floating. Jalen stared, frozen. This wasn't just science. This was something else, something alive inside her. Then, boom! A loud, thunder-like sound cracked outside. Jalen looked through the window. A small black ship had landed in the trees. No lights, no markings. But 3 dark figures were already walking toward the house, weapons in their hands, eyes glowing red. Jalen didn't wait. He turned to the girl. "You need to wake up. Now!" She gasped and dropped back onto the bed. The glow faded. Her eyes blinked rapidly. She was shaking. "They're here," she whispered. "They always come after the dreams." He pulled her up. "Then we fight. Or we run." "No," she said, voice trembling. "You should leave me. I'm the reason they're here." Jalen shook his head. "Not a chance. I bought you from them. But now, I chose you." Footsteps on the porch. Jalen aimed his rifle at the door. "Get behind me," he said. The girl stood slowly, weak but ready. The door exploded inward, metal pieces flying. 3 masked figures stormed in. Jalen fired once, hit one in the chest. The figure dropped. The other 2 aimed. One shot hit the wall behind Jalen, the other grazed his shoulder. He grunted in pain but stayed up. Then the girl stepped forward. "No," she whispered. "You won't take me again." The lights flickered. Her body glowed again, but this time not blue, golden, bright, blinding. The room filled with a pulse of energy. The 2 attackers screamed, dropped their weapons, fell to their knees. Their helmets cracked, smoke poured from their suits. Then silence. They were unconscious. Jalen lowered his rifle. The girl stood in the middle of the room, glowing softly, her breath slow. Then the light faded. She fell forward. Jalen caught her in his arms. She looked up at him, weak and afraid. "I told you, I'm not normal." He smiled through the pain in his shoulder. "I never wanted normal." He carried her to the bed, covered her gently, and checked her pulse. Still beating, still alive. Outside, the ship powered down. No more soldiers came. Whoever had sent them hadn't expected resistance, and now they knew. She wasn't just a subject, she was a threat. A power they no longer controlled. That night, Jalen sat beside her again. His wound was wrapped, his gun reloaded, but his eyes stayed on her. He knew now. She wasn't just some broken alien girl sold in a cage. She was something rare, something powerful, and very soon, someone would come back to finish what they started. Hunted, the morning after the attack was quiet, but it wasn't peace. The bodies were gone. Jalen had burned the black suits in the backfield. He didn't take any chances. Their armor, their weapons, their masks. He destroyed everything. The girl watched from a window. She said nothing. Her face was pale. Her hands shook. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They know where I am now." Jalen looked at her, then at the smoke in the field. Then we don't wait for them. We move. He packed quickly a small bag with food, a med kit, 2 blasters, a tool set. The girl didn't own anything, just the clothes she wore, clean, but still oversized. Jalen gave her a jacket and a pair of boots. They fit awkwardly, but when she looked at herself in the mirror, she didn't see a subject anymore. She saw a girl trying to survive. They left the house just after noon. No one saw them. Jalen didn't say where they were going. Just somewhere quiet, off the grid. They hiked across dry fields and sharp rocks, through forest paths few people used anymore. The girl didn't complain, even when her feet hurt or her jacket tore. She was used to pain. What she wasn't used to was someone walking beside her. At night, they stopped near an old cave. Jalen started a small fire. The girl sat across from him, knees to her chest. You could have left me. After they came. After what I did. I told you, he said. You're not a problem. You're a person. She looked down at her hands. The glowing lines under her skin had faded again, but they still pulsed when she felt fear. Then why did they do this to me? She asked. Why turn me into a weapon? Jalen poked at the fire. Maybe because they were scared of what you could become on your own. So they tried to control you, break you. She stayed quiet, then said something soft. I don't even know my own name. Jalen looked up. She continued. They called me E7319. That's all. I don't want to be a number anymore. He nodded. Then choose a name. Any name you want. She thought for a moment, then whispered, Lyra. Jalen smiled. Lyra it is. It was the first time she'd named herself. The next morning, they were followed. Jalen noticed first, a shimmer on the edge of the trees, a shadow that moved when the wind didn't. He didn't say anything at first, just picked up the pace. But Lyra felt it too. Her body stiffened. The hum under her skin returned. They're close, she whispered. How many, Jalen asked. I don't know, but not human. They reached an abandoned tunnel, part of an old mining route. Dark, cold, empty. It was perfect. They went inside, hiding behind fallen crates and broken rail cars. Jalen aimed his rifle toward the entrance. Lyra stayed low, her back against the wall, breathing fast. Then they came, silent, fast. Figures in long black coats, no faces, no footsteps, only glowing red dots where eyes should be. Jalen fired first, one dropped, then the second, but more came. Too many. He was reloading when one of them raised a strange device, a pulse weapon. Jalen saw it too late, but Lyra didn't. She screamed, not in fear but in power. A shockwave burst from her chest. The tunnel walls shook. Dust rained down. Metal crates flew through the air like feathers. The attackers flew backward, slammed into the stone, and didn't move again. Jalen covered his head as the sound echoed, then stopped. When he looked up, she was standing in the center of the tunnel, hair lifted by static, eyes glowing gold, breath slow and deep. She looked powerful, alive, more than human, more than machine. Then she dropped to her knees. Jalen rushed to her side. She didn't speak. She didn't move, but she was breathing. He held her in his arms. You're not just something they made, he whispered. You're something they feared. Outside the tunnel, more shadows waited. But now they knew. The girl wasn't weak anymore. She had a name. She had a protector. And she was done running. Her true form, Jalen, made a fire inside the tunnel after the fight. Lyra was weak. She lay against his jacket, breathing slow. Her skin was pale. Her hands twitched like they were remembering something painful. He had seen her power, but it came at a price. The energy drained her, left her shaking, and it scared her more than anything. Later, when she woke, her voice was hoarse. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. You didn't, Jalen said gently. You protected both of us. She shook her head. I felt it take over. I couldn't stop it. That's what they wanted. That's why they made me. Jalen looked at her carefully. Then it's time you learn what they made you. Imo. Next day, they found an old outpost buried beneath the rocks. Long forgotten, broken tech scattered across the room. Dust covered the floors and vines had pushed through cracks in the walls, but the computer still worked. Barely. Jalen powered one up using a portable cell. He connected the old drives. The screens blinked and buzzed, showing old files, lab reports, experiment logs, and then, her number, E7319, Lyra stood frozen. Jalen opened the file. Her image appeared, younger, thinner, even more fragile. Words scrolled across the screen. Subject E7319, Hybrid Project Phase 3, Enhanced Cellular Regeneration. Bioelectric weapon core embedded in spinal column, capable of absorbing and releasing high-level energy blasts. Emotional triggers activate abilities. Danger level. Red Lyra gasped. I wasn't born. I was built. Jalen shook his head. That doesn't matter. You're alive. You think, you choose. That makes you real. But they see me as a tool, she whispered. A thing. He turned to her. And what do you see in yourself? She didn't answer. That night, in the safety of the old outpost, Lyra stood before a cracked mirror. She removed the jacket, rolled up her sleeves, took a breath. Her body responded. Soft lines of golden light pulsed under her skin. Her back glowed, faintly, showing the shape of the energy core near her spine. It wasn't a machine, more like a living star caged inside her. She raised her hand and the tips of her fingers lit with gold. But her eyes didn't show fear. For the first time, they showed strength. Jalen stepped into the room. He saw her, standing in the glow. She didn't hide. You're not afraid anymore, he said. I am, she replied. But I'm not running from myself now. He smiled. Then they lost. The next morning, they planned to leave the outpost and head for the human colony base. Jalen knew someone there, a doctor, a friend, someone who might help her understand her power without using her. But before they could move, Lyra stopped him. There's something I need to do, she said. She led him to a nearby cliff overlooking the valley. She stood tall, then closed her eyes. Her skin began to glow again, but this time she controlled it. The light didn't explode. It pulsed, steady, calm, like a heartbeat. Jalen stepped back in awe. She was no longer the girl in a cage, no longer a number, no longer someone sold. For nothing, she opened her eyes. I'm not their weapon, she said. I'm mine. And for the first time, she smiled. More than worthy. The road to the colony was long. Jalen and Lyra moved through hills, rivers, and empty skies. They didn't speak much, but the silence was different now. Not fear, not shame, just peace. Lyra walked taller now. Her eyes no longer darted around with panic. She still didn't know everything about herself, but she no longer felt like a shadow. She was real. She had chosen her name. She had chosen her path. And now, she would choose her place in the world. By the third day, the colony appeared beyond the ridge. A tall fence surrounded it. Machines watched the skies. Drones buzzed above. But inside, people lived, laughed, worked, humans and aliens together. Jalen smiled. This is home. But Lyra's face tensed. Will they accept me? Not all, he said honestly. But enough will. They passed through the gates with his ID. The guards looked at Lyra with suspicion but said nothing. Jalen's name held weight here. He had helped build the place years ago. He led her to a small white building, a clinic. An older woman opened the door. Dr. Shira, gray hair, sharp eyes, warm smile. This her? Shira asked. Jalen nodded. Her name's Lyra. Shira gently looked her over. I've heard of E7319, but I see a girl, not a weapon. Lyra looked down. They made me to destroy, Shira smiled. Then you'll decide what you do next, not them. Over the next few days, tests were run, but no needles, no labs, only scans and questions Lyra could say no to. She learned her core was stable. It wouldn't explode unless she lost control. And now, she was learning to control it. Shira told her, "You're more than what they did to you. You're someone new." One evening, Lyra stood on a high deck watching the sunset. Jalen came beside her. They offered you a place here, he said. A job, a room, even training. I know, she said, but I want something else. He looked at her. I want freedom, she said. Not just safety. I want to go where I want, choose who I become. Jalen nodded. Then I'll come with you. She blinked. Why? He smiled. Because you were sold for 1 coin, treated like nothing. But I saw what they didn't. You weren't worthless. You were waiting to wake up. She didn't speak. Instead, she stepped closer and wrapped her arms around him. For the first time in her life, she hugged someone and trusted it. Later, as they prepared to leave the colony and head toward the unknown, Shira stopped Lyra with one last gift, a new ID chip, the name on it, Lyra Vale. You belong to yourself now, Shira said. Lyra nodded, holding back tears. I'll never forget what you gave me, she said. Shira looked to Jalen. She gave herself all of this. You just reminded her she deserved it. As they walked toward the ship Jalen had fixed up, a small girl pointed from the street. Is that the glowing lady? Her mother pulled her back quickly. But Lyra turned. She knelt down and smiled gently. Not glowing today. The little girl giggled, and that was enough. They boarded the ship, old, patched, but strong. Like them. Jalen sat at the pilot's seat. Lyra stood by the window watching the stars above. Then she said something he didn't expect. Thank you for giving me a name before I knew I was real. He looked at her. No, he said. You gave it to yourself. I just stood beside you while you found it. She smiled. Well then, don't stop standing beside me. I wasn't planning to. The engines roared, the ship lifted, and into the stars they flew, no longer broken. No longer hunted. Not a tool. Not a number. But a girl named Lyra, who was once sold for nothing, and became more than anyone ever expected.